What can I expect from the sale process? It's painful. It's not easy, and you really need to be firing on all cylinders because, again, you can't let the business slide, and this process is an intense process. A buyer that comes into this, particularly a private equity firm, is going to do a tremendous amount of analysis on your business, and they're going to expect to turn over every rock, read every page, every document that's associated with your business. So what we like to think of ourselves as is your first pick. An M&A advisor would be your first pick in terms of deciding to go into a sale process, go into the market, go into a sell-side engagement, as we call it. So as your first pick, we sort of go, okay, well, who's our second pick here? Well, we have to talk about attorneys and the differences in attorneys. We heard from two exceptional attorneys yesterday who are more focused on regulatory issues and labor compliance, right? We're talking about a transactional attorney. We like to think of transactional attorneys in two categories. There's troublemakers and there's troubleshooters. A troubleshooter transactional attorney is going to be somebody that won't get so caught up in every theoretical piece of legalese and tie up the deal. We want somebody that's going to look at the commercial provisions of a transaction and work in tandem with us to say, okay, what can I live with? How can I move forward? Now, there's a tremendous amount of legal components to this, which we want to deal with on the closer to the front end of the deal or closer to the LOI. Secondly, we would highly recommend, and we really have been successful when we have a CPA and an accountant that isn't your tax accountant. I'm not taking anything away from the tax accountants in this room, or if they're here or if you have them, but we want somebody that's actually going to do the opposite, right? Your tax accountant's there to lower your tax basis as much as possible. We want somebody that's going to go in there and really be able to flesh out, as we talked about, the EBITDA, flesh out the add backs, put together very clean financial statements that get us to a point where the business is very presentable in the market. There's specific home health CPAs that are in the market, and we recommend them wholeheartedly in this process. Lastly, consultants. You heard from McBee yesterday. Carissa was talking. We've worked with McBee through due diligence on a number of deals. The great thing about working with a consultant is that QA matters, and the charts are going to be scrutinized by the buyer. And it's good to go out with maybe some preliminary analysis from the consultant that you contract on the front end of the process. So something to consider as you go through this. Okay, so step one. So this is broken up into to three phases, a sell side process. Step one is gathering data. We talked about that. You know, we're talking a little bit about what we're going to kind of do a preliminary due diligence on the business. We're going to have a bunch of questions. We're going to set up a data room or a virtual file, and you're going to populate that with all the information that we need on your business. From there, we're going to do a more clear assessment. Before, we would have done a preliminary assessment when we went through the whole multiple process and methodology evaluation. This is going to be really pinpointing where we see your business in terms of its value. Tracking your history and growth, getting into the story of your business. It's really important as to how you started the business, but more importantly is why are you selling? Analyzing your strengths and creating a confidential information memorandum. So it's called confidential. It's a pretty robust document when it's all said and done, but it's called confidential because we don't want anyone in the market knowing that you're selling your business. We don't want your competitors knowing. Obviously, we don't want your personnel knowing. It's a very discreet process. The way that we handle that is we create what's called a blind summary or a teaser. And the teaser is what we go out to market with in a broad auction. To go out there, we have a buyer network. We go out to that buyer network. We present them with this teaser. It gives a very high level picture of your business, in terms of the geography and how the business operates. It gets into some specifics, but never divulges your identity. So that's very important. And I talked about this earlier too, that your personnel should not know that you're selling your business. You're good. You run a good culture. You know it's all about your people. It's not that you're hiding anything from them. It's that you need them to be focused on the business and not worried about what's going to happen. Uncertainty, again, of the future can really hurt the operations. All right, so one of the issues that we get into is that there's aspects of your business that you probably aren't as proud of or you don't like. I mean, by a show of hands, I mean, is there something about your business that is less than perfect that you wish you could improve? I mean, yeah. Okay.
Does anyone want to say what that is? No judgments. Remember, we're rewarding honesty and transparency here. Staffing.
Staffing. Yeah, I mean, staffing's a big one. I'm gonna have this here so I'm not throwing a chip across the room. Okay. I should throw it. Hold on. Can I throw it over you? Hold on, let me see. Oh. I fell on the ground. I'll leave another one here. Anyway, so look, you have to understand when you go through a sale process. By the way, I'm a much better M&A advisor than I am a pitcher. When you're disclosing your business, you have to look at the whole business, right? And look, there's a lot of things in here that the buyers have seen it all. We've seen it all. And when we're disclosing these skeletons per se, we just want to make sure that we're coming out there and being as honest and transparent as possible, because we don't want this. What we don't want to have happen is 2 months later, 3 months later down the road, the buyer discovers something about your business that we didn't disclose, and then you either get a price adjustment or we end up having to kill the deal after all that time and money.
Okay, step 2, marketing to buyers. Now, envision step 1 is finalized, right? We have this great document, this confidential information memorandum, and now we're out to our network extremely confidently. Now, all in the back of our minds as your intermediary and advisor is to, again, increase the probability of your company being sold and to drive valuation to the height of the market or beyond. And that's in fact always in the back of our minds as we're embarking on this phase of the sale process. So, as we say here, driving multiple offers. Now, when these offers materialize into what's called an LOI, a letter of intent, we're obviously helping you negotiate, or we're on the front lines helping you negotiate purchase price, employment agreements perhaps, really every term possible that could be the best benefit for you. Now, in terms of valuation and purchase price, what's typical, and let's keep the private equity recapitalization example aside, but what's typical and standard is that 90% of your proceeds are wired to you at closing, and 10% is actually paid at closing by the buyer, but it sits in escrow for reasons or for indemnification, and we can talk a bit more about that thereafter, and that actually gets into mitigating your risk post-closing, right? And anything legal we try to get in front of in the LOI to make it as robust as possible in order not to create an impasse later when we're talking through the purchase agreement. So again, 90% at closing, the 10% stays in escrow, typically 12 to 18 months, executing the LOI. So at this point, we've gone through a process, we've found the right buyer, they've put this great offer in, you would sign the LOI, granted most components are non-binding in nature except for 2. There's the confidentiality of the LOI, and then there's the exclusivity. So signing an LOI means you enter into exclusivity with a buyer. We stop marketing, or your intermediary stops marketing, and we stay highly integrated, highly involved, and we all give it our best effort to solidify the deal with that buyer you went under exclusivity with. And again, that's typically, on average, there's always that exception, on average 90 to 120 days. So just some more pitfalls or a common pitfall in step 2. in relation to what Andre said earlier, loose buyer vetting. So this is on us. Remember we spoke about confidentiality, or it's on us and your intermediary. But confidentiality. So before we share any information on your company, number one, an NDA is signed. But even after that NDA is signed, we're still having conversations with these buyers to ensure there's the right fit. I mean, they could be qualified financially, but it doesn't mean that your business is the perfect opportunity for them. So why expose it to someone that may be qualified financially, but strategically it doesn't make sense? So the role of your intermediary is not, to fling out these memorandums to anyone, even after the NDA is signed. It's to be thorough. It's to make sure there is a potential fit. And it's only at that point in time do we end up sending access to your confidential information memorandum and a data room and any other important information we're including about your company pre-due diligence.
So not being comprehensive with the LOI negotiations, another pitfall. If you get an offer, they come in all shapes and forms. I mean, you might get an offer that's, a paragraph. That's not sufficient. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we create almost a mini, a template of a purchase and sale agreement from this letter of intent. Again, that's just anticipatory. It's to make sure that as we go through this entire process, that when we get to the end, there wasn't some big thing that we left out. We like to talk about things like net working capital and how much you'll be able to retain at the end of the deal. We like to get into the indemnities, representations and warranties that you're making as a seller in terms of your business. Again, there's some legal terminology here, so we'd like to have the attorney review this, but an LOI that we are signing these days can be as long as 7-8 pages long, covering a variety of different factors within the process. So step 3, know what to expect. This part of the M&A process is about closing the deal. So managing timelines here and avoiding roadblocks is essential. As Mike mentioned, it's on us to make sure that the buyer is complying with what they agreed to in the process. Due diligence can be very arduous, and there's an exclusivity period that we have in place. Let's say that that's 90 days. That means you can't talk to anyone else at all. Now keep in mind too, the buyer, there'll be a non-solicitation provision in there as well. So they can't do anything like talk to your personnel or go out there and talk in the market about it. It's a very closed chamber of conversations. I mean, it's a silence chamber in terms of how we're doing this deal. So when we start going through timelines, we start making sure that it's the buyer coming through what they said they would do. And that's very important because the LOI does not have any earnest money attached to it. There's no deposit monies. This is about seeing the intent of the buyer all the way through this process. We prepare for what's called the quality of earnings study. Quality of earnings weren't around 5 years ago. I mean, at least not in the lower middle market. You very rarely saw them, occasionally. This is now the standard for every transaction. A quality of earnings is just a rigorous accounting audit of your business. We've had buyers that come in with Price Waterhouse or Ernst & Young come in here and do very intense quality of earnings studies. This is why we want to have a CPA or at least very solid books and records that are managed by a CFO type within the business so that we can respond to the quality of earnings. Because what will happen is if they come up with, let's say, an EBITDA number or add backs that are different from ours in their study, they're going to push back on that multiple, or not the multiple, but the pricing rather. So they're going to push down on that valuation a bit. And we want to be able to counteract that in that process. Once you get through the Q of E with the accounting teams, we get to the purchase and sale agreement phase of this step in the process. The purchase and sale agreement these days is usually a stock purchase. It's a purchase of the membership of your LLC. It's migrated over that because the financial buyers structure them that way primarily. But there could be 4 contracts at this phase in the process. And ultimately, all this is done to get us to a closed deal. Okay, so losing focus on your business. I've already talked about this enough. Just make sure that, don't do it. Just make sure when you get into this that you have the framework set up that the business will not lose its performance or its economic standards that you've had for the years you've operated it.
Okay, and look, we've touched upon this as well. You definitively need someone with the experience we have, the skill set we have, to guide you through every phase of the process. You think about the legal world. We sometimes say you wouldn't go to court, right, without an attorney. You certainly don't want to embark on the sale process without having an intermediary, M&A advisor, or investment banker.